Right, in previous slide what they are trying to say, that grant should be I for how many clock cycles. Here if you look at this max acknowledge length, maximum acknowledge length, that is nothing but maximum number of clock cycles the acknowledge can be true. Now come to our slide. Okay, now maximum acknowledge length is 0. Okay, this is acknowledge, so multiple request violation. Okay, then look at here clock and reset, that's and all. Okay, now what's happening here, without getting any request it is giving acknowledgement, that's why we are getting violation. Then request, for this request we have not yet received any acknowledgement, but before that itself it is started to give the second request, so that's why it is violation. And then look at here also without any request it is giving I, acknowledgement I, so violation. And then what is this, here correct, right? Here no violation. After the request in the very next clock cycle it is giving acknowledgement, so no violation. Okay, so after a violation checking is turned off until old is acknowledges sampled deasserted. What will happen after a violation, checking is turned off. Once it find any violation, then it will turns off until old acknowledges sampled deasserted. Okay, for example here old a is acknowledgement signal. Okay, now violation has occurred. Now it will not do the check, our assertion module will not do any check until it this old acknowledge signal changes, or until the old acknowledge signal deasserted. Okay, next the second example, here we have changed the name, for example parameter, we are overriding the parameter here. What is that, minimum acknowledgement clock cycle is 2 and maximum acknowledgement clock cycle is 3. Okay, then the remaining things we remaining things are all 0 here. Okay, now the instance name is valid volt a. Okay, now the same kind of structure what we have seen in the previous slide. Okay, now ensures that multiple volt requests are not made while waiting for a volt acknowledge. Getting what this will do, multiple hold requests are not made while waiting for a acknowledgement, that is the same thing what we discussed in our previous slide, and that every hold a acknowledges in response to a unique hold request, that's also same thing. Ensures hold a acknowledge asserts excuse me, asserts 2 to 3 cycles after each hold request. So what will happen after after the reception of request signal, within the 2 to 3 cycles it has to give acknowledge, right? Look at here hold is this is request kind of signal, right? Hold is request and hold is acknowledgement for this one. Now in this clock cycle it has received this request. In the next clock cycle it's getting acknowledgement, that's okay. Then here what's happening here, it is this is actually wrong, why? So after 2 clock cycle, before 3 clock cycles it should get, right? But what's happening here within 1 clock cycle itself it is getting acknowledged, that's why here we are getting violation. Then if you come to here, what's happening here, a request is asserted, but look at here, within one clock cycle over, two clock cycle over, three. Here we should get the acknowledgement, but we are not getting. Instead we are getting here, right? So that's why that is a violation. Okay, getting? It's clear, right? Yeah, this is an request. One, two, here we should get, but we are not getting. Instead here. Okay, here we have mentioned minimum acknowledgement cycle, maximum acknowledgement cycle as 2 and 3. Okay, but look at here. Here we have changed all those values as 0 0 0. Okay, now what will happen? What it has to do, ensures multiple old requests are not made while waiting for a old DA acknowledge, and that every old DA acknowledge is in response to a unique old request. That is same as we have seen in previous examples. But here the extra thing is ensures old DA acknowledge asserts for 2 clock cycles. Here the acknowledgement should remain high for 2 clock cycle. Look at here. Things we have to concentrate are minimum acknowledgement cycle, maximum acknowledge cycle, request drop, deassert count, all these things. Okay. Now look at this. Here we have instantiated that assert and check checker. Okay. Here what are the things we are passing? Minimum acknowledge cycle 0, maximum acknowledge cycle 0, request drop is also 0, deassert count 0, maximum acknowledge length everything is 0. Okay, and remaining property type, message coverage level and severity level all are initialized to their default values, right? Okay, now what is the instance name? Valid hold data, valid hold here. Now here the signal hold is act as a request and hold a act as a acknowledgement. Okay, now look at this timing diagram. So actually what this assertion will going to do, it will ensures that multiple hold requests are not made while waiting for a hold a acknowledge, and that every hold a acknowledges in response to unique hold request. It's clear, right? So for example if it is receiving the request, okay, for that the person sitting at the opposite side has to give acknowledgement. Okay, so before it is getting that acknowledgement for corresponding request, if it is again rising uh, request, means the assertions will show a failure flag. Okay, so look at here. Here clock is there, right? Clock and reset. Okay, after the deassertion come to here. Okay, here what's happening? Hold is request signal, so it's I. Okay, once the request is I, then it will expect the person who is generating this request signal will expect acknowledgement, right? So for this request he is getting in the next clock cycle, is getting the acknowledgement in the next clock cycle. Okay, okay, now look at here. Here request, again request is high, at the same time grant is also high, so it's not possible, right? So violation. The next assertion checker monitor we are going to discuss is assert and check. Okay, so look at here. What are all the extra parameters? Minimum acknowledgement cycle, then max acknowledgement cycle, and registered drop, deassert count, max acknowledge length, property type, all these things, right? Then it is coming under even bounded assertion. Even bounded assertion. Okay, The syntax for this assert and check, the normal so module name and instance name, port list, then parameter overriding. Okay, now we'll see what is the description of each and every parameter. Okay, we'll first start with the minimum acknowledge cycle. That means what? Minimum number of clock cycles before acknowledge. That is the meaning. A value of 0 turns off the acknowledge minimum cycle check. Value of 0 turns off the minimum acknowledgement cycle check. Okay, by default it will have the value of 0. It's clear, right? So before acknowledgement, before the acknowledgement, it should wait for some number of cycles. Okay, that we can mention here. And maximum acknowledgement cycle is maximum number of clock cycles before acknowledgement. And here also the same case, 0 turns off the acknowledge max acknowledge cycles check. Okay, and then what? Request drop. If greater than 0, the value of the request must remain true. Okay, if this value is greater than 0, value of request must remain true until acknowledge. Do you want me to explain this one? Yeah, this is nothing but if we can